As a team, McLaren still has to learn a bit more with its drivers when it comes to winning. Hamilton has no regrets about the switch. He is responsible for one success. Yes, of course, Sainz should drive a Mercedes fast car, good car.
Hello, dear Motorsport-Magazin.com friends and Formula One fans, to AVD Motorsport Magazine with Christian Danner. Hello.
Yes, hello everyone.
Issue number 12 is, of course, about the British Grand Prix. A sensational race with winner Lewis Hamilton. He had to wait a long time. We haven't had to wait that long for a really good race, but this has now topped everything we had planned, or how did you feel about it?
Yes, of course. I mean, it was clear from the start that there were quite a lot of people who could drive the same speed. And it was also predicted that it wouldn't always be the same conditions, i.e. rain, a little rain, a lot of rain, short rain, long rain, no rain, dry. So it was already clear beforehand that it was going to be a blast. But, and I really have to take my hat off to the drivers who ultimately let us enjoy this race, they all put on a great show in these conditions. Respect. I drove a lot of laps in the rain at Silverstone, drying track with slicks and so on. But what the drivers achieved there was world class. And that's what led to this great result.
I had just met race director Niels Wittig on the flight back, and I reassured myself that there really wasn't a single yellow flag in this race, and that in these conditions shows that we really do have the 20 best drivers at the wheel, I would say.
Yes, it's always overlooked. I mean, it's always great and great racing and scandals and track limits and I don't know what all, but there are very good drivers at work, and you can see that on a racetrack like this, it's not a granny circuit, yes. And in such conditions, of course, it's extreme, and that's why I was pleased. I was pleased that the guys did such a good job.
And I don't think there was anyone who wasn't happy with Lewis Hamilton to celebrate this long-awaited victory at his home Grand Prix. We don't want to take anything away from this story, but we still want to take a closer look at McLaren, because McLaren still managed it, of course. 2 possible victories in one race, one with Lando Norris and the other with Oscar Piastri. It's a bit of a red thread that runs through McLaren now. They've had the fastest car for several races, but not winning. Why is that? Is it the drivers or is it the team?
Well, as always, everyone is part of the team. The team wins and loses together, and the driver is also someone who has a bit of a say. In this case, I'll come back to that in a moment, has something to say, and the driver is someone who is, of course, a very, very important, if not the most important component once you have the package together. So one thing at a time, why did McLaren throw away 2 victories, potential victories? How can something like that happen? Well, of course, there are many, many things, and a lot of things come together, especially at Silverstone. Personally, I am of the opinion that McLaren managed to do the most important thing of all, a long time ago. They put a car there that you can win with. As we know, that is the basic requirement in Formula One and also the most difficult thing. We mustn't forget how often we've heard about wind tunnels that don't correlate, about ducks, about problems, especially Toto Wolff and Mercedes. They fiddled around for 3 years to somehow get a bit of performance back, and the McLaren clearly has it. So now the next topic. What are all the ways of throwing away a potential victory? Yes, I would say so. Learning by doing is a very old-fashioned way of approaching things, but especially in motorsport, in such extreme situations, it turns out that this is actually the only method that works. Every artificial intelligence makes mistakes, but fixes them and doesn't make them a second time. And as hard as that is for McLaren, that's exactly what they did. With all the tools, with all the predictions, with all the technology they now have, simulation tools and so on, at the end of the day, there is always something, the human being who decides, I'm going to make a pit stop now, but not a double stack in a row, but I'll let the other guy drive another lap. That was a crazy mistake at McLaren in Silverstone, but he hit a human being. He certainly won't hit it again next time, because you have to imagine that you lose 6 or 7 seconds if you do a double stack, i.e. if you finish the 2 in a row. But now this poor Piastri has lost, I think, 20 or 25 seconds in a wet Silverstone on slicks. Was that predictable? Huh. In a way it was, but you just thought that was the safe option. The human element is incredibly important there. I'm sorry to go into so much detail right now, but now we're getting straight to Lando Norris. No, I followed that with enthusiasm and also saw what they did wrong. Last stint, Lando Norris, first time, well, in between there was another one with the coming in too early, coming in too late, and so on. So, of course, there's another one too.
So we're still in Formula One to be on the safe side.
Stint, that's where you get a bit of luck. But now we come to the McLaren. What else did McLaren do wrong? Well, the last stop should be red, so soft. Quickly up to temperature will be just right, or on medium, or because the track is so fast and the tires are so stressed, on hard, where the tire is a bit more precise. You have to imagine that it doesn't smear like that. There's not such a vague phase in between turning in and until the car does something. So what do? You ask the driver, good tried and tested means the driver says, Lando Norris says, yes, I don't care. That's not really an opinion. The team decides, we go by the data, soft tire, faster temperature, that helps us. And what was it? Wrong. That's where the human factor, Lando, you drove all the tires in free practice. Which one do you think you like best? Don't always say you decide that, no personal responsibility. Say it yourself. I know. The medium is better, or the hard is perhaps even better, depending on what you have tried. So that means the mixture of artificial intelligence, simulation tools, weather reports from NASA, all the things you have today, mixed with the driver's opinion, and now it's just the way it used to be. Actually, a bit of feeling, a bit human, that's how we do it. That's also the reason why everyone at Red Bull thanked Max so much. Super call, really hit it when it first happened. I think I went from Inters to slicks.
McLaren said themselves. Actually, they would have liked to take the medium. There was a reason why they had it left as the only top team. But then they couldn't bring themselves to do it because they saw what the others did, what the Mercedes did, for example. They just wanted to react. They just reacted. Do you think the team still lacks this standing, this broad chest, we are who we are? Instead of just saying, we've done this, then we'll do it too.
Clearly, they covered the Hamilton. They saw it go red. We'll do the same. We won't do anything wrong. But it was still wrong. No, of course, that's something. In the last race, we talked about how Lando Norris still has to learn how to overtake Verstappen. Knowing who he's overtaking, you can't go into it naively and say you'll manage somehow. You need a plan, or you have to take your time, and it's the same with the team. Just do what Mercedes does is not the right plan. And with Hamilton, he was very lucky that it went well. He was very lucky.
Do you think McLaren will be able to rectify these mistakes in the foreseeable future? Do you think they can, this really, really good car that they have now, into results?
Yes, of course they can. Logical. They are great people who work there. And, you always have to imagine it like this. A small child who starts cycling, such a small child, they cycle along like this. And the mom always says, don't look at the ground, look where you're going. The child thinks, yes, boom, and rides into the lamppost. What happens? It has learned that mom was right after all and is learning at the moment. Please don't take the comparison personally, but I'm imagining Lando Norris on a bike right now. Yes, Lando Norris is riding up to the lamppost, and that's exactly how it works at the moment, and it doesn't take long. And now I'll tell you what the problem is. In Formula One, further development is omnipresent. Everyone continues to develop, and now they have a car that is at least as good over the distance, I would say even better, than the Red Bull and also than the Mercedes. And now you have to implement that. Now, because who knows what will happen in 2 weeks or 3 races. There will be a new upgrade, and then the Red Bull will suddenly be better again. And then you have another car problem and you're lagging behind. And that's what makes the whole thing so annoying. And that's what makes it so emotional, because of course everyone says, oh, God, how can that be? I've made a mess of everything here. The only thing that helps is stay calm, stay cool, talk to each other, and just like Oscar Piastri, who has never ever said a bad word, never. He said maybe it wasn't right, but with the pit stop and so on. But we'll see how it goes from here. I'll make the best of it and put my head down and step on the gas. And that's what you have to do, not get emotional like in Maranello from time to time, but just get the job done and to get on with it. Let's see how we get on. And I do believe that McLaren will manage that, of course.
Then let's put a spoke in the wheel. I'm curious to see if you'll be right. The resolution will most likely come pretty soon. But that's enough about McLaren now, and we'll move on not only to another topic, but also to another section, to your favorite ASKAvD section. Now we'll take another look at the race winner, Lewis Hamilton. The question comes from Muffin Mario NV. Hello, Christians. Isn't that bitter for Hamilton? He jumped ship from Mercedes because he doesn't think they can do anything anymore, and Ferrari looks like the better horse. And then the role reversal happens. Mercedes unexpectedly turns the tide, and Ferrari drops off massively and once again looks clueless. What is going on in Lewis Hamilton's head right now?
Yes, first of all, I think muffins are funny, of course. I suppose chocolate muffins. Who asked a question that I'm sure Luis is asking himself? Tell me, what have I done here? I've now gone to Ferrari, and in the meantime, Mercedes has actually managed to put together a car that I can win with. And of course, because I'm so brilliant, I won. But I think from Luis's point of view, from his point of view, it's a bit different. I'm absolutely 100% sure. He believes that with his presence, with his personality, with his driving grandeur at Ferrari, can personally turn the tide at Ferrari. And that is something he was always told during his Mercedes years. Was always told he was already defined as a superstar, and that he can, I don't want to say walk on water, but that he can at least make a better car out of a not so good one. I think that is so ingrained in him that he still thinks, well, now I've done it at Mercedes, it's time to go back to the top, on the top of the podium again. And I'm going to show them in Maranello how it's done, because I am Lewis Hamilton. Please don't get me wrong. I see Luis as a great personality, an incredibly good driver, but it's just his way of seeing himself, the way he sees himself. And I think that's the reason why he doesn't regret going to Ferrari.
That's also a point that we've already discussed with Verstappen. These absolute top drivers must think of themselves as the reason for their success and not necessarily the car. Exactly. Now, Lewis Hamilton himself has said, because he was also asked whether this was a bittersweet victory in the direction of the future, so to speak, in the direction of Ferrari. He says himself that it would have been bittersweet if he hadn't achieved anything more with Mercedes. So he's quite happy that it's going to happen again now, as a farewell, to end this great story like this. Do you believe him? Do you think he'll give Mercedes a boost at the end of his time, possibly also for the future after him?
Yes, and to stick to my theme, he doesn't begrudge them it because he thinks it's because of him. Luis managed to finish the race so brilliantly here, and there's always something to it. I mean, you can think, talk, and say what you like about him. At the decisive moment, Lewis Hamilton always delivered, and that's something that he's certainly positive rather than negative. He and Mercedes, his team, his life's work, if you like, have not left the ring as losers, but as winners, and now there is a new task ahead, and he will tackle it with all optimism, vigor, and energy. To tackle it. I think that's how you have to see it.
Now, I'm really looking forward to your opinion, because I know we were both the two biggest doubters, I think, when it came to the Mercedes performance, because we've been told so often over the last 2.5 years at Mercedes that they've now found the reason why it wasn't working, they're turning things around and so on. Do you think it's finally happened now? I mean, okay, Austria, they were there when there was something to get, but Silverstone, was a bit of a different ballgame?
Silverstone was a bit of a different number, but Silverstone was a bit of an audacious race because, of course, there were these English weather conditions. You can't completely underestimate it. A Grand Prix, you saw for yourself from car to car that Piastri was suddenly in the same car with the same tire. I would say 1 lap, 2 seconds faster, which Lando, until he was in the gearbox. That there were differences between Russell and Hamilton. Suddenly one was much faster than the other, and nobody really knew what had happened here. And that's because of the conditions and these, let's say, very special conditions that we had there. And that's why I remain a little bit skeptical. I still have a little bit of skepticism when it comes to Spa. Well, it could be the same. We're going to Hungary first. In Hungary, we'll see. I think pure speed will be more important than this. Mercedes has an attitude to the car, and that is called drivability. And that's exactly what it is in situations like this. When it's just a bit wishy-washy, I never know. Do I drive with slicks in the rain? Do I drive in the rain with dry tires or with dry tires with inners? That helps incredibly. And I think the direction Mercedes has taken is the right one. Whether it will be achieved by total performance, we still have to see. So I'm still a bit skeptical that McLaren and Red Bull have been reached.
So thank you very much, Marvin Mario, for this question and for the transition to the topic of Hamilton. And Hamilton, of course, also goes hand in hand with the driver market. He has set the whole thing in motion, as he still is, already at the beginning of the year with his announcement that he was leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. And we are still looking for a successor, not us, but rather Toto Wolff. What is the current situation for you when we look at the driver market? Is Carlos Sainz, who still hasn't made up his mind and is now apparently the king of the transfer market, is he now perhaps a little more in the direction of, okay, I'd rather take this 1-year contract with Mercedes, with which there is possibly, because maybe I can even become world champion?
So I would say that there are many components involved. How good is Kimi Antonelli really? Quite honestly, it's not just us who are asking this question, but the entire Formula One paddock and the whole motorsport world. Because, okay, he was good at Silverstone, but when someone is so stable in 12th place, is he the right man to replace Hamilton at Mercedes? You have to ask yourself that. But let's leave Kimi at the back for a moment. The advantage of Kimi is that I can put him off for as long as I want. And if it's only after the Abu Dhabi test drives to say, hey, my dear, now it's you. He's in the driver carousel. He doesn't play a big role. Mercedes can always take him if they want. Toto Wolff now has to decide who is really the best for me. You can also park the Kimi somewhere else who is really the best person to take me forward here. Will take us further. And of course, it's Carlos Sainz. We don't even need to talk about that. And Carlos is someone who, of course, already knows full well that all the options he has, with the exception of the Mercedes option, which has now opened up again, put him in a car where he's back at Toro Rosso level. I don't think that's quite what he wants. And that is also the reason why he is certainly intensifying talks with Mercedes at the moment, logically combined with the enthusiasm that the car is now at least almost, or at least de facto, capable of winning again, almost capable of winning in terms of overall performance. That tastes good to Carlos Sainz. You can imagine that he has that in the back of his mind.
Imagine this plot twist. Lewis Hamilton decides to leave Mercedes and go to Ferrari. Sainz has to vacate his cockpit, then goes to the Mercedes and actually does well in it. So, of course, that would be an absolutely crazy story. But the Mercedes issue is a problem for Carlos Sainz. Probably not just a 1-year contract, because then Mercedes will always want to keep the door open for Antonelli. Now, however, many cockpits will be closed for 2026. So the doors are closed for Sainz. Would you take the risk?
Yes, logically, because if he wins 25 races and is really at the front and on a par with Russell, what do you think the Mercedes without need. Put Antonelli in the car, not on your life. If you have the chance, if you believe in yourself, I can do it, I can do it. Then get into the Mercedes, show what you can do, and then you'll stay there 100%, even with a 1-year contract. It would also have the advantage that the second year would probably be paid a bit more if you want him. So I think would definitely do that if I were him, because the rest of it is a waste of time. He disappears somewhere and then somehow nobody needs him anymore. That's just the way it is in Formula One.
It's also a really interesting story because Carlos Sainz waited a very, very long time to make his decision. Some of the teams that are already a bit angry and he doesn't like it very much. But maybe it's the right tactic as it turns out. I mean, we talked about it with Hamilton, whether he perhaps regrets it now. At Red Bull, you can say that they perhaps regret the decision to extend Sergio Perez prematurely. We have already talked about that, about the Sergio Perez situation. Now there are even rumors he should be replaced this year, or perhaps he will be this year. Based on recent performances, would you say that would be appropriate?
First of all, the strategy. Of course, as team principal, as Helmut Marko, as Christian Horner, as Red Bull, always try to make sure that I have as many options open as possible in case X, Y, or Z happens. As an example, if Perez gets a bit of a hangover, I've already signed him. As a second example, if he continues to perform as badly as he is, I can always park him, put Lawson in, or even move Sainz if I want. But the options are unlikely. It's about the options I have. And that's how a team boss thinks. And that's exactly how it is with Toto Wolff, who has Kimi anyway, because what else is he going to do? He might take Sainz, and he has what other options? Maybe Bottas, who is a solid, maybe not the ultra burner, but a solid figure. He certainly was at Mercedes. And so on. And so every team tries to get there so that they have as many options open as possible. And if there's no other option, they go for it. And Sainz does the same thing. He talks to everyone. The Williams can be so annoyed. Now he hasn't said yes. Yes, of course he hasn't said yes because he's a shit car. And until he doesn't drive anything, the Williams will drive. But as long as he has other options, he has to keep them open. And that's why I think Carlos Sainz is doing the right thing. Even if many people whine a bit and say, yes, but he could have said yes to me, but he didn't because he would like to have the fastest car and he's just waiting. So I think it's fine the way he did it.
Nico Hülkenberg did exactly the opposite. He committed to Sauber, or rather Audi, relatively early on. Do you think he's biting himself in the ass a bit now?
Does. As far as Mercedes is concerned, perhaps yes. But of course, you mustn't forget that Nico is at the end of his career. He still has a few good years ahead of him. He's an absolute top driver, as we saw again at Silverstone this weekend. And I think he's getting to the point now where he is perhaps no longer thinking about the future and the world championship title and motorsport nirvana like Carlos Sainz. But he is thinking quite seriously and homemade about his current account. And in this case, that is certainly very well served. And he has peace of mind for the next 3 years. He would have that. So relative peace of mind, which of course he wouldn't have at Mercedes. And otherwise, he should drive for Alpine. Yes, he could go straight on to Haas. Or I think he made the right decision. You always have to compare it with your own parameters. How would I like it to be? What do I want? Of course, he would like to drive for McLaren, but that is unlikely. Or at Red Bull, do I want to drive in a team with Verstappen? I don't know. Or at Mercedes, yes, I might be able to drive there for a year, but the current account says stop, stop, stop. There's a better solution. Sorry to be so flippant, but I think Hülkenberg made the only right decision.
Is a nice way to end this section, I think. But as you know, we haven't reached the end yet. There is one more classic here in this magazine, namely the AVD pit stop. In today's AVD pit stop, we take a look back and forward at the same time, namely to the first Rhine-Main Classic around Frankfurt am Main. It will take place between September 13 and 15, 2024.
Yes, I will ride the AVD Histo Tour in August. And of course, I'm really looking forward to it because it's a genre of motorsport that I personally have never done before. It's relatively soft. So, of course, it's also about tracks and so on. But not this brutal. I absolutely have to beat the stopwatch, but I have to come to an agreement with the stopwatch, so to speak. That means there's regularity stuff and things like that. And I'm looking forward to that. And I think it's a nice thing to keep it alive because the joy of driving and the joy of competition doesn't always have to happen exclusively on the racetrack. And the AVD makes it possible for everyone. I'll be in Budapest on Thursday and Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday. RTL will be broadcasting the whole weekend this time, i.e. Saturday qualifying and Sunday race live. And of course, I'll be in the studio in Cologne to commentate. But I'm really looking forward to it because Budapest was actually a very nice Grand Prix in my own memory and experience. But also, the atmosphere there is very different to England, where all the super nerds are. There's a bit of a vacation atmosphere, and it's usually nice and warm and hot. So I'm looking forward to it.
So we're already looking forward to this race. It's also the last one before the summer break, and then hopefully the exciting and thrilling Formula One season will continue. Thank you very much, Christian Danner.
Absolutely. Thank you. Go back. No matter what the topic, if you still have a question or two for me, then use the hashtag ASKAvD.